panelists, and I completely agree with what Chandrasekhar sir just said. That India has to do it, and I take proud that I am part of Clear Meat, and we are pledging here with the help of all the panelists who have joined us and all the audiences that we are going to take. We are going to put India on the global map for the segment of cultured meat. So, without much ado, and thank you, Ravi sir, for moderating the session so well. We'll move to our next session, which is on current landscape of cultivated meat, the Indian perspective. So this was the global perspective. Now we are going to discuss about the Indian perspective. The session will be moderated by Mr. Shushant Bhatia, who is the investment manager with Caspian. So, Mr. Shushant Bhatia, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. I am Sushant Bhatia, and I have with me Dr. Kadalmani and Shubhanker as the guest for this session. We will be talking about sustainable and meat culture-based products in Indian market, and how both the ventures that Kadalmani and Shubhanker are driving are contributing to that. Before that, I want to give a quick background about myself. I work with a fund called Caspian. We provide debt and equity investments in impact sectors like food and agri, climate, healthcare, education, and wash. Right. So these are key focus. We have been investing for last 15 years now, 9 years through debt and 15 years through equity. We are yet to do any investments in alt meat products. So I am personally very curious to hear thoughts of the guests tonight. I want to invite Dr. Kadalmani to give a brief background about himself and then also talk about his venture.
Yeah. Thank you, Shushant. Thank you very much. My name is Kadalmani Krishnan, and I am the co-founder of the company called as Mealtech Private Limited. We are based out of Bangalore in India. Again, academically, I have a PhD degree in biochemistry from the University of Cambridge, UK. And I also worked at Harvard University as the postdoctoral research fellow for some time. And I have about 18 years of experience in healthcare industry, wherein I was engaged in maintaining the GMP facility and to be able to manufacture therapeutic drugs at a scale for commercial launches. But Mealtech is a food tech company. The vision of our company is to provide safe and affordable meal via sustainable and efficient technologies. Basically, we want to touch the life of people who love animal, but also love meat. And they would also further want to contribute to the environmental catastrophes and, some way helping it to stop. Now, we are driven by the question, or the problem is the current production method of meat are unsustainable to cater to future demands. That's what is driving us. And we all know from the discussion since morning that meat in future will not come from dead animals. Therefore, we cannot ignore this fact that we need to have a sustainable technology or ecosystem to be developed so that we are able to cater to the future demand, which is safe, affordable, and to be able to secure food for all. That's about Mealtech.
Thank you. Shubhanker?
Yeah, hi Shushant. Glad to be here and talk about what we're doing in Myowork. So first off, I'm Shubhanker. I'm the CTO at Myoworks. Am I audible, by the way? Sound good? Okay, great. So at Myoworks, what we're trying to do is create an ecosystem of input products for the cultivated meat industry, starting with a novel scaffolding solution. where we've taken a generally regarded as safe food material, which can also support animal cell adhesion and proliferation. So you can have the kind of same taste, texture, mouth feel as meat without, having to kill an animal and without the need for recombinant proteins or without the need for animal origin proteins. So that's what we're doing in Myoworks. In addition to this, we're also developing a couple of more products, like developing some cells. And so, yeah, that's the brief of what we're trying to do in Myoworks. It's just exciting here to talk more India specific because this is a new space here, and I think that could be an interesting, at least from an export perspective, is what we're seeing right now for these products from India. There is demand because we have, great people like some of my panelists here who has, so much rich experience in biotech. And that's common in India, right? And we have that knowledge base here that can be easily cross-applied to this kind of millennium challenge, and where we can, drive a lot more value toward India in the future for this industry specifically.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Shubhanker. So the first thing I want to understand from both of you, and I'll go to Kadalmani first, is in terms of customers, right? As a customer, how far do you think the Indian industry is from the product? And you should also take, of course, your example in terms of meal tech also to it. When do customers, it may be B2B, B2C, you talk about that also in terms of business model. And, what kind of timeline do you see industry and meal tech within that context?
Right. Thank you. Great question. I mean, just before getting specific answer, let's look at the global perspective. Just let's look at the customers themselves. Like for us, the customers can be bucketed into 4 categories. Number 1, the meat exporters. Number 2, the meat sellers. It could be some brands like Licious or Fresh to Home, etc. Number 3, these are the packaged food companies like Godrej, ITC, which is getting into chicken nuggets and frozen foods. And 4, the final is the QSR, quick service restaurants like Pizza Hut, burgers, McDonald's, so on and so forth. So these are the 4 buckets, okay, which we are looking at. But the consumers are non-vegetarians, okay, non-vegetarians and flexitarians to begin with. And second is people who are looking for more quality food, nutritional food. These are the consumers. And others consumers or the customers could be the geographies wherein they are resource constrained. For example, lack of land, lack of water, so on and so forth, where they cannot have industrial farming at a large scale for consumptions. So having understood now, they are all, as I said, our customers or consumers are primarily non-vegetarians and flexitarians. They know the taste, they know the texture, they know these flavors. So getting closer to the sensory experience is very crucial. So as everybody spoke in the morning, taste is the king, number 1. We have to give them the right taste at right pricing, and quality, which should be quality assured. These are the 3 things. Now, to get these things, there are basic steps that you need to follow. First of all, to get to the taste, you need to have cells, the real cells, which tastes exactly similar or have the same taste profile, at least let's call it taste profile, as in traditional farming. So we have to grow cells at that scale and have them, mature like a tissue engineering setup to make them as a tissue and to be able to present it in the cuts, whatever the consumers are. So this in itself has got various stages to get into this stage. Number 1, you need to have a strong R&D to, develop such cells at this scale, right? So, but doing R&D is not simple here, because first problem that we will face is availability of commercial cell lines. So if I want to manufacture something for the consumer, I need to have a, approved cell line. which is not commercially available right now. So one has to develop it and then, work on it. So that's time consuming, number one. I'm just trying to give you the time frame and how across the value chain. Number two, okay, I have established this line. Now I would have to grow it, in terms of scale. For growing, I need to have a media. Right now, the issue in the industry is the media is very expensive, as everybody in the morning spoke. Media is expensive. So one has to, bring down the cost of media. Again, some sort of research has to get into this. Innovation has to happen to bring down the cost of media. So assuming that you have also solved that, now you would move to scaling it up to the magnitude, to achieve magnitude of economies, to be able to, have a sustainable business. Now we don't have bioreactors of that scale. So we have to, have manufacturing facilities built to cater to that scale level. So that's again a challenge. And that's again, building that infrastructure will take some time. And then once you have that, then you would have to have the product which has to be market tested for market fit. You would have to do a lot of sampling. Then these things should happen parallelly. Okay. And a lot of innovation and players will have, like Shubhanker sitting here, will have his own, innovation brought into this entire value chain to be able to speed this up. So and parallelly, what needs to be done is we need to have regulatory guidelines settled so that you have the right investor who has a clear vision that this product will reach. So the answer to your question would be the product launch will be somewhere around 2026 and beyond. I mean, meat as such. But if you say the inputs for manufacturing the meat, for example, cost raw material, which is almost ready with us. We have the low-cost media, which is readily available with us, which can be scaled up and given. So those sort of allied products can be commercialized much earlier than the final meat product as such. That's the stage where we are at.
Yeah, thank you. And this partly also answers the question that was there in the chat. What is the current state of companies? Why there are very few? What I'm taking away is the timeline for launching cultured meat, either to consumer or even for exporters and sellers, is long, so that consumers might not be even seeing them, but there is action happening in backend, which will reach them in few years. Now, I want to come to Shubhanker. Shubhanker, because you are sort of an input provider, right? You are laying the foundation of these products. What kind of action are you seeing at your end in terms of your own product development and, even the market accepting something like, scaffolds that you are building?
So as Kadalmani clearly pointed out, this is an interlinked question about why there are so few companies that are getting invested and are in India. It's because of the revenue, like, the vision that a VC will have. If a VC has a long-term play that says, okay, this is eventually going to make money, this is key IP that's going to make money in the future, they really need to see some kind of a pathway to revenue. And that's where input plays come in handy, because in more liberal, you can access then more liberal jurisdictions that have, something in the pipeline already for commercialization, like Singapore, like the US, like hopefully a few more countries join that list soon. For that, what we have seen is that, ever since we started actually working on this from an input lead, an inbound request of saying, hey, this is a problem in the cultivated meat space. Can you do something about it? And we've seen this time and time again that, companies abroad are very excited and about, finding these products on the cheap. But if you look at any other food industry, any food manufacturer, it's very, very distributed, right? If one manufacturer makes one kind of powder, they just do that the entire life, and they just are the experts in that. And that's how your processed food today is so cheap and accessible and standardized, is because of specialization. And that's like a cornerstone of all a huge amount of food companies around the world. I think that's the kind of action we're seeing. We already have a few proofs of concept in-house, a couple of companies we're working with as third-party collaborators. And we started working on this project in 2020, back when we incorporate this company through some government support we got through BIRAC BIG. And then we started kind of, the snowball effect went from then on. And so it's been great since. I think clearly there is a need for it. These technologies need to be created. And, I totally agree with Kadalmani that it's going to take like an all hands effort to solve these individual problems individually so that we can all become experts and then eventually deliver a cheap, easy, tasty product to the consumer.
Yeah. And cheap is also a big criteria, right? In India, we have, of course, plant-based products that are kind of coming closer to the market right now. This cultured meat sort of would be very interesting segment. So one question which is in the chat is, I think Kadalmani also mentioned multiple hurdles. So is there cost, government approval, consumer acceptance? What is the biggest hurdle? Maybe quick input from both of you on this.
So there is
no challenge. Kadalmani, the challenge is you have to just choose one.
From scientific perspective, it is very difficult to choose one because it's a combination of all of these. Why these are not? Suppose I'll give you a theoretical example. If you are able to clear one, but you do not have a regulatory approval, what's the purpose of doing this, right? So therefore it's a combination of everything which is hurting. See, I'll give you small figures of things. Number one, gestation in this entire thing, cultivated meat industry is high. One has to wait. So, and cost of R&D is huge, and which is also coupled to, building capacity and infrastructure, which is, cost intensive. So these are pertaining to this. And second, suppose if I'm an investor, I want to invest, but there is no clarity on go-to-market strategy with regard to approval status at all. Will the product get approved in 2016, 17, or 2025, 28, or 30? So that in turn will decide my returns as an investor, correct? So investor they aren't clear because there is no real clarity on, go-to-market strategy that can be developed for India at least, right? And the third, consumers, for consumers now to put this onto the menu card, how are you going to differentiate between, let's say, butter chicken and cultivated butter chicken?
Yes.
So category creation is also in terms of awareness. So these are, it's a combination of all of these. I must tell you that the people who are working in this space are very, very courageous, who believe that they can overcome all of these issues at some time point and can be successful. So I'm glad that there are many companies who are trying to do this.
Got it. So all, there are multiple challenges and they are not separated from each other. I'm just trying to answer to someone who asked that. I'll quickly move to the next part where I want to, and Kadalmani briefly touched upon this, is investors. See, from venture capital perspective, even globally, right, and later it came to India, venture capital was supposed to go to these kind of issues which require that capital, which creates innovative solution. Over time, over last 5 years, it has chased quicker results, though, quicker returns. So I want to ask Shubhanker first, in terms of your personal experience, how have interactions with investors been? Do you find them interested or excited about it? And what stage have you reached there? And then same question to Kadalmani as well. Shubhanker, first you.
Sure. So from an investor perspective, we're grateful to have closed our kind of first round of external VC funding from our partners at Ankur Capital last year. So it was quite a journey. We went through quite a few different calls and conversations. What we are hearing from the market right now is As you said, right, like there needs to be a little more venture and venture capital, especially in the Indian context. We, from a foreign context, there is a lot of appetite for this still in the accelerators and those other VC firms abroad. But the challenge with that is the incorporation abroad. So you really kind of have to choose at that point where they're not comfortable with, like either Indian IP holding abroad or stuff like that. And the Indian investors, like we were lucky, and there are quite a few now, who really want to invest and are really looking deeply at deep science, deep tech, and that's really great. But we really need more of those to really put venture back into venture capital. And I think hopefully, I'm an eternal optimist, so I think eventually this will get easier and easier as more cutting edge innovations come to market from these kinds of investments. These VCs will see a return, and forces of the market will get VCs to take more of these bets, and I think that will happen in the near future. On the other thing, the biggest scale up thing, I think it's just about cost. Like personally, there is all these keystone technologies that need to be solved, but if you solve all of them, then you have cells that are meat, right? There is no question about that. And if they taste the same, and if you can prove, which has been proven, with some of these pilot studies and food safety studies happening around the world, that it's reasonable, scientifically reasonable to say that cultivated meat is safe to eat. So the biggest hurdle to scale up is the cost. It's these input ingredients that are made in the pharma industry, pharma grade, pharma level, that are never going to scale up if we don't crack our heads on how to make better bioreactors, better medias, better scaffolds, cheaper, sasta.
Yeah. Okay. Once you make it both cost and safe, you're there, is what I'm hearing. And good to hear, Shubhanker, your experience in terms of investments, and good to hear that Ankur is already there. Right. Kadalmani, what has been your experience in terms of investors?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So here it is. Generally, these cultivated meat companies are pre-revenue, correct?
Yeah.
So these are pre-revenue. So there is nothing like valuation depends upon the stage where you are at and what you have invested and how much is it. And if you don't have an IP or something which is valued, then the entire game changes. So here I'll give you a theoretical example. Let's say a company, pre-revenue company with having some IPs like let's say Myowork or some clear meat. Let's say they are valued at $5 million. Okay, and if to do this sort of activity, they would require let's say $2 million. Okay, for next 16 or 18 months. Now, $5 million is the valuation. You need $2 million. So for, let's say $2.5 million. So you would have to give out 50% of your equity, right? That's one of the key challenges, for players or upcoming players like any company like Tech or big players, because because the input cost is high to be able to go to the next level. So here meet you are on okay, yeah, thank you. So the way out is this. What companies are doing is this. They are applying for grants. Like we have a proven track record like Myowork, who apply grants, get some fundings, get some inputs, show that the capability to to be able to prove something, make value out of it, and then the valuation increases. Right? So right now, as small companies in India, this is the path that everybody is adopting, because otherwise you would have to shell out, or you'd have to cut out your company and at a very early stage.
And so do you think grants are helping at that stage, and we have sufficient of those in India?
There's not enough, but at least there's something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It'll never be enough.
Yeah. So because it's a huge mammoth task to solve many problems. And I'm glad that DBT, DST, they are all taking initiative, to give out at least small grants so that many people get benefits, many idea can be catered to. They are thinking in that way as a policymaker agencies for grant. But having said that, this is the time where we need larger grants for scale-up activities. Right? Small grants will be given for R&D activities. That's fine. The time we are maturing. Now for the maturing companies, you need to have larger grants to be able to, go to higher scale for manufacturing. That's the need of the hour, which I think will evolve with time.
Yeah, got it. I want to quickly take one question which is in chat. I think from a consumer perspective, they're asking, traditional meat is natural, right? Cultivated meal, isn't it same as processed meat, and it's not perceived as natural? I mean, is there any view do you have on that, Shubhanker or Kadalmani?
So I think the steady, like the standard boilerplate answer to this is that traditional meat is not non-processed, right? 70% of all produced antibiotics are used in so-called traditional meat, like this romanticized vision of you have 10 chicks and 20 goats and you cut one. That's not the case when it comes to industrial livestock agriculture, as we call it. It's highly processed. There is high amounts of intervention in it. So I think we're beyond the point of saying, just you should have something that's non-processed. If you have that luxury, you should. But from a mass market perspective, you're always going to have some degree of processing because of how populated our world is, because of how the centers of population are made. And cultivated meat is amazing for that because it requires a lower land footprint. So the material needs to travel less, fewer preservatives are needed, and it's self-defeating when it comes to antibiotic use. If it gets infected, that whole batch becomes useless. You can probably sell tainted meat. Selling tainted cultivated meat is impossible. Cells won't grow in a contaminated media. And so I think on that perspective, cultivated meat does much better. It's not 100% natural, but nothing has been 100% natural since we left the cave. This is just the next step.
Yeah, no, well said, Shubhanker. And yeah, from all of us, what we are saying is, in some ways, cultivated meat might be even safer than what we get in the market. So whoever asked this question, and of course, the challenge is getting the consumers to believe that. And I think all of us are working towards that. So one last question, because we're short on time as well, in terms of farming, right? Does it affect the farmers negatively? Are we trying to impact their livelihoods? Because in a way, some portion of dairy, etc., is going to be replaced by cultured meat. Both of your views quickly, 2 minutes each on that.
Yeah. Okay. There are various aspects to look at it from various angles. Say, let's look at the milk industry. Earlier, how the milking was done and how it was delivered. So it was very fragmented. Few people had their own traditional farming. They took out milk and then they supplied to the nearby areas. Now, when the milk revolution and industrialization happened, what happened? So industrial milking came into process. So which was, catering to the entire field. Now, how we would have to look is, you can't suppress technology and benefits of technology. We need to understand that. You can't do that for a long time. This will come up as data clearly shows that future meat will not come from dead animals. So we have to accept the fact. Secondly, what I believe is this will normalize or harmonize the standards for food industry as such. Right? The fragmented meat market will get organized, will become an organized sector. We have a clear example, right? 5-10 years ago, meat industry India was very fragmented. Now, Licious, Fresh to Farm Homes, these people have trying to organize this sector in itself. And also to answer to your previous question, how to differentiate between traditional meat and cultivated meat. I mean, as you rightly said in the beginning, Gen Zs and millenniums are the early adopters, will be the early adopters of these, in many cases. So they are prone to, taking their mobile phone, taking a QR code and tracking it. Cultivated meat gives the power to, ability to track where it started and where now, what is the course of travel that the meat has traveled to get onto their plate. So entire traceability can be provided.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're saying is it's bound to happen, and we better adapt to it. It's like when computers were launched, everyone thought humans will be jobless, right? That may not be the case, but even farmers will have to adapt to it. I had one last question. I want to quickly take your inputs. Whenever you are selling, is environment impact story, or are consumers or investors buying actually because of that? Quick thoughts on this, both from investor perspective and your customer perspective, because we talked about land, it saves water, huge savings, but is that why people are buying and investors are investing? Shubhanker, you first.
Yeah, sure. I think I would say there is definitely a ESG sort of impact angle to this, 100%, because it just makes more sense. And in this situation, like, there is an alignment on impact and efficiency, and thus probably savings in the future. Just because it is more efficient in land, water, and resource usage, because you put fewer calories in to get more calories of protein out. That play is quite well aligned with saying this will eventually make a more efficient form of meat. And so I think that story is what people have right now, because as you know, the commercial story isn't like completely out there yet, right? We're still developing the science. So this is a hope for the future, and the hope that we can develop these cool technologies along the way, and maybe if this larger dream doesn't come true, you still have these really useful pieces of tools that can be cross applied elsewhere if necessary.
Yeah, Kadalmani, closing thoughts on that question.
Right. See, from our experience and things, like, what we believe is consumers, I mean, there are a very limited number of consumers who really, want to make an impact in environmental per se. Because most of them are unaware of the implications of how it was bred, made, and what it is. However, the awareness is increasing now. Okay, one. But having said that, the investors are very well aware of the impacts, global impacts. So they want to be in line with the vision, global vision. Okay. Say, for example, they want to be in line with the COPP, which happened 3 months ago. Right. So they are, and they want to bring a meaningful change. Hence, investors are very cautious. They want to have an impactful investments, both in terms of business as well as ethically, in terms of society and environment. That's what I believe.
Good to hear that, from both of you, in terms of at least investors just clearly being aligned and consumers also slowly catching up to it. I think that's a good optimistic note to end the session on. I hope people who have listened to it found it useful. Thank you so much, Shubhanker. Thank you so much, Kadalmani. It was, learning for me personally as well, and as an investor as well. Great to see action here, and hopefully as consumers we would all see cultured meat products in our plate in 2 to 3 years in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck.